Hello again, everybody. Today, hot day in Connecticut. I'd like to talk a little bit about a book, backstory, read a little bit from it, called BART, A Life of A. Bartlett Giamatti, by him and about him. This book was originally published in hardcover by Harcourt Brace in 1990. And the editor, one of my first very important editors, his name was Corley's Cork Smith at Harcourt Brace, who then was fired, and then as freelance, some of his authors worked with him, and I did some other books with him. He designed this book. This book, the design won a prize. If you notice, it's a square format, which then Harcourt Brace used in a series of other sports books. So this was, you could say, a sports book about an important figure in baseball, and actually began his life in academia as the president of Yale University. The first, he was president of Yale University at the age of 39, and of course an Italian American, which those of us in that, how could I say, capsule, know is virtually impossible, not only at that time to attend a school such as Yale, but to become president was awesome. And for that reason, he escaped me as a figure when I was doing a book called Valentino and the Great Italians. I couldn't get my so-called head around a man such as that. Then, when he passed away at a very young age, after he banned Pete Rose from baseball sometimes later, and he was commissioner of baseball, he left academia to enter professional baseball, which in itself is an awesome idea. I was sitting with Shel Silverstein in the Dante Cafe on McDougal Street that day, and news came that Bart had died, and Shel said, who had a house on Martha's Vineyard where the Giamattis also had a home, and Shel said, why don't you do a little book about him, by him and about him? So we worked together, Shel and I, and you come across writers, come across people saying that all the time. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I have a life story. You want to write it? And 99, we dismissed those ideas because really that's not what writing is all about, really. And but after we left, there I was on McDougal Street, and instead of turning towards my house, towards Hudson Street, I turned the other way to the NYU library, where I had I had credentials to enter the library. I was actually teaching. It was like I had teaching at NYU, and I went up in the stacks, and it was late, and I looked up Giamatti, and I came across his books. He was a great triple scholar of Italian Renaissance. And I came across one of his books on Paradise, and I opened the first page. It's in the book. And it was a photo of a Renaissance garden that was shaped like a diamond, like a baseball field. And I said, wow, you know what? That's a good kickoff point. That maybe when he was teaching and writing his wonderful books, alongside that was his love of baseball, which is true. He was raised as a Red Sox fan, and his family had radio tuned to the Red Sox games over the radio. His father was Valentine Giamatti, who also was a Dante scholar and professor. So his father and his background and all that's in this book. So then I went home, fell asleep, and then I woke up with a photo of Ted Williams and Dante on one side, and on the, I had the images of Renaissance figures and poets and baseball figures, and I said, well, why don't I do that? Why don't I just juggle or do side by side baseball and poetry? And so that was the result of this book. Now I'm going to read a little bit from it, just briefly. The height of the baseball season. The word home. Why is home plate not called fourth base? As far as I can tell, it has always been thus. And why not? Meditate upon the name. Home is an English word virtually impossible to translate into other tongues. No translation catches the associations, the mixture of memory and longing, the sense of security and autonomy and accessibility, the aroma of inclusiveness, of freedom from wariness that cling to the word home and are absent from house or even my house. Home is a concept, not a place. It is a state of mind where self-definition starts. It is origins, the mix of time and place and smell and weather wherein one first realizes one is an original, perhaps like others, especially those one loves, but discrete, distinct, not to be copied. Home is where one first learned to be separate, and it remains in the mind as a place where reunion, if it ever were to occur, would happen. That was from an essay called Take Time for Paradise. Concluding this little ditty. The game's deep patterns. Somehow the summer seemed to slip by faster this time. Maybe it wasn't this summer, but all the summers that, in this my 40th summer, slipped by so fast. There comes a time when every summer will have something of autumn about it. Whatever the reason, it seemed to me that I was investing more and more in baseball, making the game do more of the work that keeps time fat and slow and lazy. I was counting on the game's deep patterns, 3 strikes, 3 outs, 3 times 3 innings, and its deeper impulse to go out and back, to leave and return home, to set the order of the day, and to organize the daylight. That's from The Green Fields of the Mind, a great essay by A. Bartlett Jamadi. This is the first edition. There are other versions on Amazon. This is the first edition. Thank you for tuning in today. I will see you next time.